To reflect on the day's ceremony, we're joined now by SABC News Specialist Correspondent Sophie Mokoena. Good evening, Sophie. Now, how has the Jackson family remembered their father?
Well, the family, those who spoke today, emphasized the fact that he was a leader, he was a people's person, he was an activist, and he was a committed person in terms of family and politics as it relates to the struggle of those who were disadvantaged, who were marginalized, and who were oppressed. And also one son spoke about Rise, Jesse Jackson Rise, which means he must continue to guide them at this difficult moment. And them saying that during his time, he used to look after the family, but also look after people in America. And he spent his time also supporting people around the world, particularly in those countries where people were oppressed. And he never got tired of fighting for justice, dignity, and also for equality, as we had the president there speaking, and therefore a leader and a father.
How significant is it that President Cyril Ramaphosa delivered a tribute to him today?
I think it was quite an important moment for South Africa in particular, because he did support all people who were oppressed around the world. And in South Africa, he did support the struggle of the people of South Africa, and he did come to South Africa after the death of Steve Bantu Biko. You would recall when he was killed by the apartheid system, and he was here to come and speak to people around the country, and particularly in Soweto, showing support to the nation, and particularly the black majority who were in grief. He also came to South Africa during the elections in 1994 as part of the group of different people from different countries who were monitoring elections in South Africa. And he then again came to South Africa during the ANC centenary in 2012, when ANC was celebrating 100 years. He was also honored with the highest order, O.R. Tambo, as it's part of the tradition for the country to honor people around the world who supported those who were oppressed before 1994. But the other important issue was that the president pointed out that he walked the path that was a shining example of people like Pixley Isaka Seme. You would recall that Pixley Seme was one of the founding fathers of the African National Congress, the then African Native Congress. And he delivered a moving speech when he was alive in America about being an African and what does it mean to be an African. And the president saying that Reverend Jesse Jackson was an African, and therefore he was part of South Africa, he was part of the continent. That was supported by the president of the DRC, who spoke about the role he played in terms of supporting those who were oppressed in South Africa. But one thing that I noted, Reverend Jackson's son, Jackson Jr., he indicated that at some point in time, he had to intervene when some Americans were arrested in Iran, and he called the Ayatollah to say that he must release those Americans who were arrested, and he was refusing. And then he told him that he must release particularly the black Americans who were arrested because they are being used by the American government at that time as almost like human shields, saying that these people are going through what you are also going through. We are not that free in America. And therefore, at this moment, I think what is more common between South Africa and America is that when you listen to African Americans or Americans of color, they are still complaining about issues that we are complaining about in South Africa. For example, the issue of being left out as it relates to the economic benefit of the country. And he spoke about these issues when he was still alive. There's a clip when he spoke to the media in Bloemfontein in 2012. He pointed out that much as America is free, they have the political freedom, but they are still grappling with challenges of inequality. The same is happening in South Africa. Yes, South Africa is free, but the challenge of inequality is still there.
Sophie, any other points that President Cyril Ramaphosa made during his tribute to the late Reverend J.C. Jackson?
I think the president pointed out that to remember him, both America, South Africa, and the world at large must try and pursue the following principle: justice, dignity, and equality, because this is what he stood for, and therefore challenging those who are alive to continue with that struggle. And I think people like Andrew Young, some of the people who are still alive, who joined the march with Reverend Jackson, this is quite an important moment, and I think they are the ones now who are left behind to remind the world about those three important principles.
And then, Sophie, of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa ending off his tribute by saying, "Rise, African J.C. Jackson, rise," and then followed by "Rest, African J.C. Jackson, rest." So quite emotional words there, and a very moving tribute indeed. But before we let you go this evening, I want to ask you about South Africa now, as we shift our focus to the funeral of anti-apartheid activist Mosiuoa, Terra Lekota. What can you tell us about the preparations and what you look forward to later on this week?
Another important moment in the coming days, where we will see many people visiting the home in Bloemfontein to share their memories, because he was also a towering figure in South Africa. He fought for the liberation of this country. Yes, he did belong to different political parties and institutions, such as when you look at his childhood, being part of the student movement, he moved to being Black Conscious movement, and part of that included Azapo. And then he joined the African National Congress in prison. Actually, President Mandela recruited him to join the African National Congress. And later he became the first premier of Free State, because the ANC in Free State at that time wanted someone with stature to come and lead the province at government level. And therefore, the ANC in the Free State requested that the ANC at national release him to be the premier in the Free State. And therefore he came. And later he went to the NCOP, where he led the NCOP and was appointed the Minister of Defense for almost a decade. He left office after the recall of the former President Thabo Mbeki. Later, he started a political party, COPE. And that is why people are saying, when you look at Terra Lekota, you cannot look at Terra Lekota focusing only on the party COPE. He did a lot in the country, and we saw that with the president taking a decision to honor him by declaring his funeral as an official funeral, category 2. And as we speak today, the flags around the country are flying at half-mast. And therefore, that is another important moment in the history of the struggle, not only in South Africa, but around the world, because including the work that he did was to be a defense minister. And during his tenure as the defense minister, he led the South African National Defense Force deployment on the continent, supporting the policy of the country of peace in Africa and peace around the world. And therefore, the continent cannot forget Terra Lekota as it relates to his responsibility as the Minister of Defense Force, because he was there to ensure that the South African Defense Force does a work that was very important of maintenance of peace on the continent, being part of the peacekeeping mission of the United Nations. And therefore, he didn't only serve South Africa, but he did also serve the continent.
Thank you so much, SABC News Specialist Correspondent Sophie Mokoena, chatting to us this evening.